Is Osgood Perkins the best director alive today? I think he might be. Now, first off, I don't know everything about him. I'm no cinema expert. I mainly watch horror movies, and that's why I stumbled upon this guy. When I say the best director alive, I should say, rather, the best director I know of. Saying somebody's the best is an error, because there's probably a better director who just never got famous or died in a car crash. Like, I would say Bach is the best composer who ever lived, except that maybe there were plenty of great composers who we just never heard about, or their music was lost over time. It's also annoying when people say greatest of all time, like the greatest movie of all time, because we've only been making movies for like 100 years, so all time is like, what, 10 billion years? I mean, you can't be sure there's not another composer on another planet, like an alien, that wrote better music. Some backstory about Osgood Perkins is that his father was Anthony Perkins, who starred in Psycho. And what's interesting about Anthony Perkins is that I think he ended up being gay. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that's gotta be odd, knowing that your father was actually gay. But I guess at the time he couldn't, you weren't allowed, you faced much more stigma. Osgood Perkins, I think, got his first acting role playing the young Norman Bates in, I think, Psycho Part 2, because he does look exactly like his father. The first movie I saw by this guy was called The Blackcoat's Daughter, which Osgood Perkins wrote and directed. And that's a cool trait about this guy, is that he writes and directs. I should note he also mainly, I think, only does horror movies. I came to the conclusion a year or so back that the real special thing about horror movies is that they're almost purely atmospheric. Like, you give me a really cool haunted house, and I almost don't even need a story. And Osgood Perkins is amazing at atmosphere. The only other director who's as good, I think, would be David Fincher. And you gotta wonder, imagine if Perkins were to make a Marvel movie. Like, he could take it possibly to a whole higher level. Anyhow, The Blackcoat's Daughter stars, I think, Emma Roberts, who's the niece of Julia Roberts, which is sort of a nice little factoid. The next one, let's call him Ozzy, directed. He didn't direct this, but he wrote it, and it's called The Girl in the Photographs, and it's a really, really nasty movie about a guy who, it's about a girl who's being stalked and by a serial killer who keeps the girls in cages and talks to them like they're pet, like dogs, and like puts food in like a dog bowl. It's pretty creepy and it's pretty evil. But again, I mean, he's got an interesting writing style. He's an interesting writer. Even as a writer, I might say he's atmospheric in that he doesn't clutter up the script with lots of meaningless talk, just bullshit lines that people just talk because the writer's too insecure about the material to let it breathe. Then he wrote and directed I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House. And my friend, she doesn't like a lot of horror movies, but she just loves this movie. And not much happens in it, really. Again, it's atmospheric. It's not really much about what happens as much as it is about how hauntingly it's filmed. His next was Gretel and Hansel, which I don't think he wrote, but he directed. And it's, again, like really beautiful to look at. I don't really need to tell you what the story is about unless you're unbelievably uneducated. I should mention after this, he wrote and directed an episode of The Twilight Zone, Jordan Peele's Twilight Zone, which was a terrible show. But it makes me want to revisit that one episode that Oz wrote and directed. And I think he developed something of a friendship with Jordan Peele because he ended up having an acting role in Jordan Peele's movie Nope, which I think kind of sucked. That movie kind of sucked. Then he got a lot of prominence in the movie that he wrote and directed called Longlegs. And by the way, I already thought he was one of the coolest. Like, I was following his career very closely after those first two movies, Pretty Thing That Lives in the House and Blackcoat's Daughter. Again, great, very atmospheric, unbelievably scary in terms of how it's filmed. Story was a little weak, but, you know, whatever, he tried. It was an interesting movie. And I guess, I'm sorry, but when I say the best director alive, I guess I don't have a very high standards today for great directors, because, no, I mean, it was an okay movie, Longlegs. It was okay, it was fun. And he's getting pretty prolific, I think, because less than a year later he comes out with The Monkey, which I can't wait to see, which was written by Stephen King, but I'm sure the story was improved by Perkins, because every Stephen King story needs to be improved. And what, James Wan produced it or something, probably? I'm hearing it's really good. However, you have to have the taste for the kind of movie it is. Apparently it's very gory, and it's also very sort of dark, subtle comedy. So anyways, yeah, I'm really curious to see how this guy's career evolves, because I like everything he does. It's always, even if I don't like it, it's original and unique. And again, he understands atmosphere, which is so important to horror. And you know what? Maybe that could teach, if you're good at atmosphere, like, that could be a very good thing for other genres. Other, like horror, it's especially essential, but it's also adds so much to any movie in general. I'm going to take a look into his trivia page on IMDb, because that's always interesting. His mother was on one of the planes, was it one plane? Flight 11 that crashed into the World Trade Center. So I think she died. And that's about all the interesting trivia there is about him. What do you think? Does anybody else have any opinions on this dude? I think he's the coolest thing since sliced bread. And please make sure to have a nice day.